Hello, this is Stephanie Mandeville, NERI Communications Director, and here we are again for Ask Larry and Bob, episode 6. And today is Monday, May 18th already, and we're here as we always are with Larry Pirtle and Bob Walsh. Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Chef. Hi, everybody.
How's it going, guys?
Good.
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 We've had a busy week since last we saw each other or spoke on this Ask Larry and Bob. Larry, what were you up to this week?
Well, we had a little thing in Tiverton on, actually in Portsmouth on this past Thursday. We had a terrific rolling car rally in support of Amy Mullen, our local president in Tiverton, who's been fired because of her union activity and her advocacy for our members. Over 350 cars, over 500 people, met in the parking lot over there, rallied around that, and then everyone drove by Amy's house about a half mile or so away and just showed support for her. And we had Tiverton members, NEA Rhode Island members from other locals, AFL-CIO members. We even had a NEA local president from New York who was in the area came by. So it was great. And then on Friday, Amy's the teachers and support staff at Amy's school did the same thing on a smaller scale to show support for her again. So I think a message was sent to the community in Tiverton that, first of all, Amy's regarded very highly by parents in the community as an educator, and also by her fellow union members for sticking up for them. So the message was sent that the school committee, the action of the superintendent was wrong and it needs to be corrected. It was a great rally.
It was a great rally, and she was overwhelmed. It was good to see her from masked and from a distance, but it was good to see her and get a chance to tell her what we think of her, and that she's a fantastic leader and a strong teacher. And so we want to make sure that everybody gets to the website and signs the petition. So the website is bringbackamy.org. And I took a peek at the signatures for the petition right before we started, and we're at 1,057 signatures. And I'd love to see that hit 1,500. So if folks are watching right now, head on over to that website, sign the petition. And yard signs are also available, and we've got yard signs that are in Tiverton and outside of Tiverton. I know there's at least one in Cranston. So if anybody wants a yard sign, they can call the yard sign hotline, and that is 401-307-3799. And we've had some people call in, and we have folks who are running yard signs out to people's houses, which is great because that's showing support for Amy as well.
Yeah, the support's been terrific. So we're going to keep it up, and this is just the beginning. So
this is.
I know that.
Any update on the legal side that you can
Sure. I thought the rally and the coverage of the rally was terrific. I know that Amy's colleagues in her own school at Pecasset did a similar thing the next day, drove by her house to show support for her. I think it's wonderful, wonderful to be in a union, you know, that you've got the entire state backing you up when the other side behaves badly. People ask a lot what's going on legally. They know that we did very well in federal court the first day, and that the committee, through their attorney, already backed down and acknowledged that Amy had the right to talk to her members and continue in her capacity as union president. They did deprive her of her income in that second vote they took, but we know that one school committee member decided to abstain in that vote. So things are proceeding apace, as they say. The federal court process goes on. The school committee's attorneys are trying to quash subpoenas for information of the dialogue they had among themselves. Usually the other side does that probably when they have something to hide, because there's no reason they couldn't provide that information. For folks who need a quick refresher, this is a very straightforward case. They terminated Amy Mullen's employment because she was the union president and talked about union issues, and that's against the law. We're in federal court because that's deprives her of her First Amendment right to freedom of speech, because in America, political speech is protected. And ironically, it's the Janus decision of the Supreme Court, which for many reasons we don't like, but the Janus decision made it particularly clear that union speech is political speech. And the courts have always made it clear that political speech is protected. I don't think the school committee's attorney explained to them the implications of this case, because the quickest way to turn this around is for 3 members of the school committee, a majority, to recognize that they made a mistake. That happens. You get bad advice, you make a mistake. And they let the superintendent act against Amy Mullen because she was engaging in protected speech in her role as union president. That's all that this case is about. Now, a lot of things spun out of it. Besides the federal court, which we've talked about the most, there'll be the official hearing at the Department of Ed about them depriving Amy of her job. And there's a whole bunch of unfair labor practices about the school committee and superintendent's activities in this realm as well. And it's possible, the way they conducted that last school committee meeting, it's possible there'll be open meeting violation charges as well. So they are spending a lot of Tiverton taxpayer money on this foolish attempt to stifle Amy's absolute right to free speech as a union president. So there's stuff going on every day in the back and forth between lawyers and the courts, but the quickest way to stop it, if you know those school committee members, one of them already abstained, call them up, tell them it's never too late to fix a mistake and save the taxpayers a boatload of money and provide Amy Mullen. So in the meantime, Amy Mullen, bringbackamy.org to sign the petition, so that this committee knows that she's got a lot of support. So there'll be updates every week as this goes on until they do the right thing.
What's going on in South Kingstown? We heard a little something with the budget. If one of you want to kick that off.
Oh, just so I can start, and Bob can certainly add. There's going to be a referendum coming up in June, beginning of June, June 7th, I believe.
June 9th.
June 9th, I'm sorry. Coming up on June 9th, Tuesday, June 9th, to cut $1.1 million from the proposed school budget. And in a times like these, this is just a political move to set themselves up. We think people set themselves up for November, but the truth is they're going to hurt kids. It's going to put South Kingstown in a bind a year, 2 years down the road. So can lead to a structural deficit. And then as school districts talk about now, laying people off, et cetera, it's just going to cause undue harm. So we're in discussions right now. We're certainly going to encourage everyone in South Kingstown to get out and vote against cutting that $1.1 million from the school budget. Now is not the time to be cutting school budgets, especially moving forward. September is going to look a lot different than it does now. We're going to need everyone on board, and we're going to need all the programs that are already in place. So just unfortunate that some people like to take advantage of a bad situation to hurt other people, and that's exactly what this would do. It would hurt the kids of South Kingstown.
Yeah, this is a frustrating one, and we'll keep our eye out in the other 39 cities and towns in the States. The folks who are opposed to the public schools in South Kingstown, it's just sad because it's such a terrific school system, and they're using, they're trying to base an argument on a lie that it's absolutely true that the school district saved money on not running buses during distance learning, but saying that you can just take that money and apply it to next year's budget without any harm to the future makes absolutely no sense, because that will create what they call a structural deficit. And when you have a structural deficit in a budget, you will never catch up ever again. And they should be smart enough to know that, but that means that a few of these folks with this group that couldn't get elected to save their lives are now trying to disrupt things during the time of crisis, and they should be ashamed of themselves. So the way to solve that on June 9th, turn out, give the town council and the schools the budget that was already approved, and send this dissident group packing, and let them know that you still care about the South Kingstown schools and that you're smart enough to see through their deception.
Right. So we're keeping an eye on that. Let's go to questions. We have a question from Angela in North Kingstown. Do you think that RIDE from this point forward will issue a statewide calendar for all public schools?
Absolutely. I don't think as we've talked about in previous meetings, Ask Larry and Bob, that we're working on what the summer is going to look like, what the fall is going to look like. And definitely the governor and RIDE are going to move toward a statewide calendar. What that looks like right now is still in debate. Do we start a little bit earlier to allow more time for next year, depending on what could happen? Do we wait and see what happens and start maybe after Labor Day? But going to a statewide calendar gives more flexibility. You can build in, as they did this year with the professional development. They looking at, whether if it's a February and April vacation, what happens come February and it's a bad flu season or have another attack of the coronavirus. Can you then extend the vacation from 1 week to 2 weeks? But it just gives more flexibility by going to that statewide calendar. So I absolutely think that at least for next year, we'll see a statewide calendar for every district in Renown.
Yeah, I guess the answer to Angela is I hope so. I really hope they adopt a statewide calendar, or at least a statewide calendar with some flexibility, so that we have a common set of rules to work off of. We don't know what's going to happen in September, and the bigger question we get asked all the time. But at least if we get forced into a situation like the one we're going through now ever again, it'll be easier to figure out the rules. Because now it's worse now than it's ever been. We've got districts that took full vacations for a week in February or long weekends in February. They start as much as 2 weeks apart. The other part that we think we might see in going forward is there may be no more snow days. And once we figured out distance learning for weeks at a time, we'll probably have the parameters in place that we can switch to a learn at home environment for a single day. We don't know that for sure, but those are the type of conversations that are going on.
I think it's important to say that these conversations are happening, that people understand that these conversations are happening.
Yeah, it's conversations we're having every day, and we're, in conversation with the governor's office, RIDE, and, working with the school committees, the administrators. So, yeah, it's, and the key is going to be flexibility because we don't know what September is going to look like.
And it also will raise, to anticipate the question for next week's Ask Larry and Bob, the who decides question and where locals get to weigh in for that final decision and where it will be made at the state level. We saw some craziness in the last couple of days where apparently the same people on the Narragansett Town Council who didn't think it was a good idea to honor the taxpayers' wishes to have a new public library are now deciding they're going to ignore the governor's concern about the health and safety of all Rhode Islanders and decide they can just open up unilaterally. So we know that local government decisions often get folks in trouble, whether it's the Tiverton School Committee violating the First Amendment rights of Amy Mullen, or the Narragansett Town Council deciding the heck with health and safety of all Rhode Islanders are just going to do what they want.
Yeah, as a Narragansett resident, I'm very concerned. That vote is, the resolution is going to come up tonight with the town council. I think, hopefully they have enough votes to vote against it, but, not building the library that we approved and now this, yeah, we may not want to leave this in local hands going forward.
This is why it's so important to pay attention to what's going on in your town.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Plug there.
Yeah.
We have an anonymous question, which is regarding the expectation for teachers after the last day of school this year. What should our summers look like? Should we be doing unpaid work?
Well, no more or less than you always do, I suppose. We know that one of the biggest myths out there is that teachers stop working when the last bell rings for the day or for the school year. I think that the normal things you would do in the summer and any school year, our folks will continue to do, whether it's thinking about and gathering supplies and looking at their class lists and getting ready for the next school year. If there's significant work that needs to be done because we're back in a distance learning scenario, that's a different conversation we'll have and have to negotiate the impact of all of that to decide how to best structure it. But to our hope that things can go back to some level of normal. People will do what they normally have done in the past. If there's greater expectations than that, we'll have to wear our union hats and talk about what that looks like. The other part of that question that we've been getting is, you might have been hearing that they're trying to run a lot of programs over the summer. They just announced last week that maybe summer camps would open the last week of June, first week of July timeframe. That may happen, that may not happen. And what can we do using schools to do programs for the students in the summer? If that happens, that's a different conversation that we'll certainly talk about and be involved in. So I'd say tune in every week as this is an ever-changing landscape.
Yeah, I think we'll have more details about the summer on the next couple of weeks. But the summer may be a good time to look at different, in the summer camp might be a good example of, if they do open summer camps, they're going to be for groups are going to be very small. They're going to have to stay together throughout the camp. There's not going to be one group mingling with another group. The counselors, or if it's summer school, the teacher is going to have to be the same. So there might be some opportunity this summer to try some things that could carry over into school in the fall. But we should know more about that in the next couple of weeks.
Can you, we've heard, or I should say, I have seen some questions online again about teachers in ESP who are 60 years of age and older, and what that's going to look like come September. Do you have any, do you want to reiterate what we already know, and then maybe if there's an update or any further information that you might have for folks?
I think you go back to the universal question, and we don't know the answer to what the schools are going to look like come reopening time. And there won't be a great difference. I know there are some folks who think, oh, great, maybe they'll let me retire early because I'm over 60, but that's not going to be the parameters. That's a significant percentage of our membership, and the teaching and ESP workforce are over 60. And certainly the data that folks in that category are more vulnerable to coronavirus is not inaccurate, but it's not necessarily referring to the workforce as much as it's referring to the percentage of the population with underlying health conditions. As you've sadly seen, as of today, it's 500 Rhode Islanders have passed away, and a lot of them are residents of nursing homes with underlying medical conditions. So I don't think it's a carte blanche that over 60 means don't do anything. On the other hand, if we're in a situation where there is not a level of comfort with opening the schools at all, I think everyone's going to be affected fairly equally in that. It's not going to be, wow, we'll let the 20 and 30 somethings run the show and everyone else stay home. So again, it ends the same way as the last answer. Stay tuned, because there are no official plans yet. There are hopes, but hope is not a strategy.
Okay, we had a late submission from Charahoe, and this one's on layoffs. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it. Since it appears that the June 1 layoff date will not change, our district is planning for a level funded budget, which would be a $1.2 million reduction from the proposed budget. Now we're looking at 40 teachers potentially receiving a layoff notice. Since there is no clear guidance on how budgets can get approved, I'm wondering when the governor will shed some light on this. I know my district is not the only one facing this issue, and I know the governor is doing her best. But if we do not get some guidance on this, a lot of members are going to be out of jobs. Do you have any information on how the governor will be handling this?
Well, I think that we've been talking to the governor, and I know people have been pushing her to give some guidance on this. And it's, but Bob can probably address that in more detail about the actual meetings. I'll just the layoffs. The last thing we want to do is see people in a time like this be concerned about their jobs going into the fall. So, and we're also concerned about layoffs, and we are hearing from districts saying, well, art teachers, music teachers, PE teachers, librarians, if we're going to continue with distance learning. And that's just the opposite of what we should be doing, because those are people that provide programs, can do it through distance learning, but those are programs that kids need. They need resources. It helps mental health wise to have activities like music, art, and so forth. So we'd encourage districts to be very careful about their layoffs and making plans for the future. I know that budgets are questionable. We're in a huge deficit in Rhode Island. We need the federal government to step up. And certainly our congressional district's been doing this. But talking about cutting programs that kids need is just the opposite of what we should be doing right now.
Yeah, I think there are three different issues embedded into that question. The June 1st layoff deadline, we absolutely understand that if notices have to legally be given by then, and they do under the law, budget uncertainty means there will be more layoff notices. Those are not necessarily the final number. They're not necessarily going to be binding because the final budgets will come in, and the big question that the governor doesn't know the answer to, and neither do we, is will we be able to use the federal money coming to Rhode Island to cover existing holes in the budget? If we are, that's going to be an enormous relief to running the schools in the way that we'd like to be able to run the schools. If we're not, then the entire state is in big, big trouble. Separate from that is the decision for Charahoe or any other school district to level fund their budget. That's just plain nuts. You level fund your budget, you're not going to be able to provide the services. Inflation is still going on. There are services that still need to be provided. And arguably, those services might even be greater because of coming out of the pandemic. In addition to doing everything else that we're doing to try and run the schools, we're going to need to do whatever we need to do to keep people extra safe as we're getting out of the current situation. But that's an independent decision. That's not the governor's fault. That's Charahoe's fault. That's the school committee's fault that they're talking about a level funded budget. Or if you're back to the referendum in South Kingstown trying to slash the budget, that's just bad local government, and we need to fight against that because it makes no sense. So those are two different paths. Obviously, we're very supportive of the governor's efforts and our superb congressional delegation's efforts to get as much money and to Rhode Island as possible, with as much flexibility to use it as possible. The entire country is in this boat. It is an unprecedented, really is an unprecedented crisis. We've had crises of similar depth, be it wartime or terrorism or anything else, but for a pandemic, well, maybe not unprecedented. I wasn't around for the Spanish flu 100 years ago. But for the resources that we're going to need now, it's in modern times unprecedented. So hopefully Charahoe will reconsider its budget proposals, and any district that's trying to get away with taking advantage of the pandemic to underfund schools. They're not thinking long-term, because the kids we're educating now are going to be the ones who figure out how to stop the next pandemic.
Yeah, now it's not the time to be cutting programs. And again, there's going to be budget issues, et cetera. And the U.S. government really has to step up and provide more money, Congress. But now's not the time to be cutting programs for kids. We need more programs and more people, not less.
True. That's all we have for questions. You guys have anything you want to add or anything that is pressing?
Just, what we say every week is just thank everyone for the terrific job they're doing, for all the time they're putting in. One more month of school to go for most people. Hopefully districts are being flexible enough to what I know Burville's doing and others. And I even talked to my brother-in-law last night in Vermont, and their district's doing it. Saying no new work the last couple of weeks of school is a chance to catch up, make up students that might have fallen behind. The other thing, I'd certainly encourage districts some flexibility. The commissioners allowed for, just instead of a numerical grade or ABC, credit, no credit. And for some students, they may need that flexibility and opportunity. So we have another month to go. Stay tuned. The next couple of weeks, we should have a better look at the summer. But flexibility is the key going forward. But we have a long weekend coming up. Everyone enjoy it. Looks like it might actually be sunny and warm. And thank them for everything they're doing.
Yeah, it seems like a lot longer than 2 months since we reopened under the new rules of distance learning and everything else going on in society. And as Larry said, another month of school, then a couple of months of summer until we figure out what September looks like. And we are as frustrated as you all are. As I say, a lot of our members work out of a plan book, and right now those pages are unwritten for the foreseeable future. But as soon as we get information so you can fill them in, we will get you that information. And we will see you next week. And in the meantime, any questions, you can check in with us through the office and your local president and your UNISERV directors. And as always, thank you for everything you are doing. You are making it better for 140,000 Rhode Island students and their parents. And for your colleagues. And we know it's hard, but we will get through this. We will get through this.
Thank you, both of you.
Thanks,
All right.
Steph.
So we'll catch up next week. Thank you.
Next week.